Okay, everybody. So this is part 3 um, of the Motivation and Emotion lecture. And this portion is going to talk about emotion. So emotions are defined as a subjective feeling that is mentally directed towards some object, event, experience, or thought. This is in contrast to mood. Mood is just a general emotion or feeling undirected at an object that lasts for some sort of extended period of time. Whereas emotion can be typically momentary, and it's directed towards some object or event, experience, or thought. And so, examples of emotions: pride, jealousy, guilt, empathy, and usually can involve physiological arousal, conscious experience, and behavioral expression. With regard to physiological arousal, the system that is associated with emotional processing in the body is our autonomic nervous system. Essentially, if you remember, uh, sympathetic nervous system is what arouses us, meaning makes us more alert, and the parasympathetic nervous calms us. So the sympathetic nervous system increases blood flow to the brain, dilates our pupils, increases our skin perspiration, and causes sweating, results in faster heartbeat, faster breathing rate, increases stress hormones and adrenal gland activity, and decreases our digestive activity. And then, so once our emotions are calming down, we have the activation of our parasympathetic nervous system, which acts on each of these systems, but in the opposite way. So it decreases our blood flow, constricts the pupils of our eyes, decreases our perspiration, sometimes even so much so that you kind of feel a little cold. It slows your heartbeat, slows your breathing rate, decreases stress hormones and adrenal gland activity, and increases digestive activity. And so every time you have a spike in emotions or you feel something um, strong, such as, let's say, fear or excitement, right? You have the activation of your nervous system, and then your parasympathetic nervous system works to calm your nervous system back down. And with regard to emotion, we kind of start off in childhood with very basic emotions. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, it is really, really accurate in terms of how emotions and how memories develop across the lifetime. It's one of the rare movies where I, as a scientist, am like, yes, yes, this makes perfect sense. In the movie, there's 5 emotions: joy, sadness, disgust, fear, and anger. The first one to come on is joy, then sadness joins shortly thereafter, and then comes disgust, fear, and anger shortly after birth. And the truth is that most of the emotions that children feel is a combination of these 5 emotions, right? So joy and sadness make melancholy. Um, Joy and disgust is intrigue. Fear and joy is surprise. Sadness and disgust is self-loathing. Sadness and anger is betrayal. Anger and fear is hatred, right? These are all complex emotions that all emerge out of these 5 basic emotions. The truth is we have more than just those 5. As we develop and get older, we pick up more uh, nuance to our emotional expressions. So, for example, um, in this line right here, which is not the darkest, but the second darkest, just outside the center, are the basic emotions humans have: anticipation, joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, and anger. You may notice the same 5 from your basic emotions and then a couple extra, right? So anticipation is new, surprise is its own, and trust. And then as you move closer and the color gets darker, this is the more extreme version of those emotions. So from joy, you get ecstasy. From fear, you get terror, right? Or trauma. Disgust, you get loathing. Sadness, you get grief. So this is very extreme. And as you go further into the lighter colors, the emotion gets less intense. So anticipation might be just interest. Anger is just annoyance. Disgust is maybe just bored. Sadness is just pensive. And so there's lots of emotions and lots of combinations. And here you might see in this gray line, so serenity and acceptance together might give you love, or apprehension and distraction might give you awe. Distraction and pensiveness is disapproval. Annoyance and boredom is contempt. So those combinations. And the truth is that a lot of our emotions have adaptive roots, right? Evolutionary roots. So, according to Darwin, emotions often serve to convey information to others or to motivate action in order to accomplish a goal. So, from this perspective, he proposed the discrete emotion theory that states that the basic emotions that we have are innate and associated with very distinct bodily and facial reactions that relay information to others. But the reason why we all have these basic emotions is that they do a good job of communicating and having physical reactions that communicate certain things. So, for example, disgust, the goal of disgust is to avoid contamination or illness. And it tells people around you, one, that you have now consumed something that could potentially poison you, but also that nobody else should consume this thing because it might poison them. Anger is essentially the goal is to tell those around you that maybe avoid approaching, right? Because there's something wrong. And we share that. So this is obviously Hugh Jackman in his Wolverine face. But showing their canines is something that lots of animals do, lots of mammals do when they are angry, because it shows aggression, it shows that you have teeth that can kill somebody, and it tells the world around you, hey, back off, I'm not in the mood. Guilt and shame are also very useful. So think about what guilt is, that you didn't meet your standard or social norm, and so you have done something that isn't good and you know it. So in this picture, which one of these dogs is obviously guilty? You should be saying this one, because it's very clear that this dog's like, yeah, what's up? Do I get a treat? Why am I here? And this dog is like, nope, nothing to see here. And cats are much the same. And there's lots of images of babies doing this when once they start being able to act on the world. And young kids as well. So it's very clear, like, that there's this guilty look here, and it serves to send a message like, I did something that I wasn't supposed to do, right? And so we all share these emotions, and they each have their own goals and physical associations. Now, there are lots of ways that our body and our emotions interact. Like, if you've ever been really, really angry, like your body feels, and then especially when you calm down, your body feels awful. Like, our emotions are not just these things that we feel in our mind, and then they don't impact the rest of us. They impact our bodies. And so there are three theories that we're going to talk about how emotions impact bodily responses. The first one is the peripheral feedback theory of emotion, or the James Lange theory, which essentially states that bodily reactions come before emotions do, and they cause the emotion to occur. The cognition plus feedback theory, also called the two-factor theory, states that there's one aspect that impacts emotional intensity, and your perception impacts the type of emotion that you're going to have. So it's two different systems. One that determines the type of emotion that you're going to have, whether fear, happiness, sadness, and then another system that affects how intense those emotions are. And then the Cannon-Bard theory essentially states that bodily responses and emotional responses occur at the same time. So just to demonstrate what these are, the Cannon-Bard theory states, let's say you see a stimuli, a bear, and you perceive that bear and therefore you perceive danger. It says that emotion and bodily arousal, your fear of the bear, and the heart pounding happen at the same time. The James Lange theory, or peripheral feedback theory, essentially states you have stimulus, let's say you see the bear, you perceive the danger. What comes first is your bodily arousal. Your body responds before your emotions do, and then this causes your emotions to occur. The two-factor theory, and the one that has the most evidence to suggest that this is the correct perspective, is you see your stimulus, you see the bear, you perceive the danger. That perception causes your body to arouse, right? But this perception also tells you what type of emotion to feel, and that your bodily arousal tells your emotions how intense this emotion should be. The bodily arousal doesn't tell you what emotion to feel, it just tells you how intense it is. So the perception of the danger of the bear tells you what type of emotion, and the bodily arousal tells you how intense that emotion should be. And if you want to watch a YouTube video that summarizes all of these three theories about emotions, there's a really good crash course video on YouTube that you can watch. And that's all we got. Super short lecture on emotion. We're not going to go too deep into it. If you have any questions, let me know.